Welcome to the F5 Recovery Podcast. This is one for Ricky and my co-hosts, Kirsten Hooven and Adam Martin. We are so excited for another amazing show. We, of course, want to thank our sponsors, Heat Transfer Warehouse, for being the champs, if you will, as well as the F5 Project, Ridge Treatment and Reentry Center, and, of course, our new season sponsor, GoAwayBear.com. We have an amazing guest today. Brian Wimpin is going to be joining with us, and we're looking forward to a great conversation. So stay tuned, and of course, please subscribe down below. We would love to be able to have you continue to support our podcast. Hi, Brian.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Glad you're with us. Thanks for being here.
No, excited. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes with this all-star crew.
Shit. Okay.
My reputation.
Right on. Well, welcome to the show. We've been doing the show for like 3 years, or 3 seasons. Sorry, 3 seasons. And so I'm glad you came on. I've known Brian for a while. He's a man in recovery. He's got a couple books. He's worked at a couple vendors that that F5 has partnered with over the years. Sponsored events, flew in to go to events. Like he's the all-star here.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't even live around here.
Yeah.
And he probably works more than most people I know. So I appreciate everything that you've done for F5. I'm glad you came on today.
No, it's it's and like you said, we've known each other for a while, and I've had the pleasure of coming up there a couple times, which has been, it's just been, I come away from that way more, taking way more than I give, right? I mean, it's classic that you hear everybody's stories and spending time with everybody with F5, is the majority of the time that I've been up there, and oh my gosh, like it's fantastic. So it's just a pleasure to be able to talk a little bit about the new book and what's going on, and just grab a few minutes.
You wrote a book. Like I have a friend that has a book. That's crazy. That's wicked. So cool. Well, Ricky is he's our guy. He's the question answer. He's the host. He's the man with the plan. So I appreciate you're on, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew how much you've done for F5 in the past. So thank you.
Absolutely. So, Brian, obviously we're going to get to your book a little later, but I wanted to start just so if you can share, obviously Adam kind of just share a little bit about yourself, but if you can just share a little bit about your background, but specifically if you can share a little bit of your recovery story with us and how you were able to get yourself to this place.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Brian Wimpin, and I actually live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. If you've never been, put it on your bucket list. Great place, great food, great people, all that stuff. It's interesting that, like everybody else, it's absolutely not a unique story. Started out really young on the recovery side. Just as a caveat, the last 9 years, I've been able to be actually in the industry to help try and deliver services around mental health and substance use recovery and public health, which has been, kind of the highlight of my career, because I actually get to help people, try and find their way on their journey and be a part of that support mechanism. Mm-hmm. And I'll kind of start with something that happened actually last night. And so I've sent a handful of books out. I want to know, we'll get to that. And one of the guy that is part of my story, he's the one that I called when I was absolutely, I was done bouncing at the bottom. I did a lot of bounces, lots and lots of bounces. And I finally was there and had just enough pain and just enough, thank goodness, awareness to, if it didn't change, I wasn't going to make it. And so the guy that I called 13 and a half years ago texted me last night about 8 o'clock and said, "Hey, thanks for the book. And, glad that we're in each other's lives." And so, and we've known each other for 20 years, and he has been incredibly more gracious than he probably should have been over the years, based on my behavior and lack of actions when it comes to friendship a long time ago. And so yeah, so grew up in between Wyoming and Nebraska. Kind of go all the way back. Kind of all started. It was interesting. So everything was pretty normal till about 5, and then things started took a little bit of a turn. And so I've kind of had the chance to really reflect and think all the way back, right, and see like, okay, why is this different than than other people? Why did this kind of start? What was it? Like, I've been able to, and especially writing, you kind of have to unpack that. And as you go through like therapy and you do the work in recovery, you get enough tools that you unpack the things that you don't even know need unpacked. And I've been able to kind of really go all the way back in the writing process, actually. And we moved away from all of our family at 5. Like my entire everything that I was attached with. So I was adopted at birth at 2 days old out of California. Parents came from Wyoming, picked me up, came back, and so it's interesting. So I think there's definitely some attachment issues. There's a much higher prevalence of substance use disorder, depression, anxiety of adoptees because of some of those things. And so I think I fit right into, again, not unique, fit right into the statistic. And it kind of started when we moved away from all the family, like all of my family, adopted family, everybody, both sides, both sets of grandparents, everybody, tons of aunts and uncles. We moved, and it was total isolation. Moved to a farm in Nebraska, and which is just sort of Dakota Lights, if you think about it. And there was nothing there, right? So we kind of started over, and we had a lot of volatility because of, my father had kind of undiagnosed PTSD from, Vietnam, which again was kind of an awareness after I got in recovery and he had passed away, that what he was battling, right? Because I couldn't stand him my entire life. Like he was everything. I worked so hard my entire life trying to be, until I got into recovery, and trying to be exactly the opposite of him, which caused another issue. Is I didn't really get to develop my own personality because I was at a young age was trying to be the opposite of something. And so when you're so focused on, okay, I don't want to be that, you forget to be what you are. And so, which kind of just layered onto everything. And so yeah, so it was kind of, nothing serious until, got, again, 13 years old, right in the statistic. It was the first time that I had the opportunity to go drink as much as I could drink, because my parents really didn't drink very much. Worked hard, they're probably workaholics was the only, kind of ism that was other than some other emotional stuff. But man, it was the first time I ever had a chance to drink full blackout. 13 years old, drank as much as I absolutely can. And it was one of the, threw up everywhere, got in a fight, probably stole some stuff. I don't know. I don't remember. And it was probably one of the greatest nights of my entire life up to that point. It was fantastic. Couldn't wait to do it again. Once I decided I wasn't going to die the next day from the hangover. I was so like, okay, that's it. Like that was amazing. And I started chasing that way to change how I feel I was a daily drinker, but that was 13. By the time I was 16, I was a daily drinker. Thank goodness I was just smart enough to learn how to take tests well. So academically, I didn't have people on me because I was able to stay right in the middle of the curve. And so didn't have people messing with me. Parents are like, if you work hard, you go to school, you don't get arrested, then you must be you must be doing all right. And so yeah, and was good in sports, was doing all those things, but was just a mess at 16, right? I was already managing the duality of being, and not in recovery at 15, 16. So I had a very splintered life, right? And I would show up and do what I had to do here. And okay, well, he must be all right. Then I would show up and do it over here. So very few people, because I had some teachers, this is in the new book. I had a couple teachers that left when I was 14 that were coaches. And that was again isolation. It just layered on some isolation. And these were people that knew me, held me accountable, didn't put up with, my bullshit, and really saw who I was, and they left, right? They went on to another school, and all of a sudden it was that I was replaying that whole abandonment element. And so no accountability, right? It was like the night that I could drink everything I wanted. Now I could do everything that I wanted. Nobody really was going to hold me accountable. And that just layered on top of everything. And so yeah, so I, made it through that, didn't, wrecked a bunch of cars, blew cars up, didn't actually get any arrests in high school. Um, so couldn't stay in high school. Went to basic training and for Army National Guard when I was 17. Graduated early. Went in that, and I'm like, okay, that's gonna fix everything, right? So I was already in the cycle of people, places, and things are going to fix it. So I was still chasing things to fix how I felt, and so yeah, went there, and that was 5 months of only one night of drinking, and the only night that I had off, we got blackout wasted with a bunch of people, a bunch of guys off base. So, but that was 5 months of absolutely no alcohol, except that one night. And so I get back and things are going to be different. Still 17, so I'm still young. And I get back and I'm go right back to everybody that I was hanging with. And at that point, I graduated high school, and I had a summer of complete independence in my mind. And it was, just work, work, drink, work, drink. That's
Sounds
literally
amazing.
right. It was, and it's interesting because that was like this interesting point that I didn't really understand that the substances had taken over yet, right? The dependency was absolutely like headed in that direction. And by fall, went to college where it was absolutely complete 100% freedom. And guess what? I took full advantage. I mean, I was absolutely nitrous oxide. I mean, I was full on turbocharger, get as much as I could and go to class occasionally, worked like 2 or 3 jobs. So the working thing, luckily I don't know how not to work. And so that was always like I worked just hard enough that I wouldn't get fired, right? And they liked me just enough they wouldn't fire me for
Right.
for showing up late, showing up wasted, like doing what we do when you're not exactly responsible and you're completely thinking about yourself. But nobody would fire me because I still, even doing that, I was still one of the hardest workers and everything. And so, but then, unfortunately, I was introduced to cocaine at 18, and that was an entirely different, transcendent experience, not in a good way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh wow, I can do this a lot faster, and not throw up, not black out. I like, oh my God, things are gonna get interesting. And it was great, right? And so tons of money, and it was like it was the next 5 years was an incredible mountain of everything I could get in my system. And So, and I finally had an overdose, and decided that might actually kill me. Like the drug side of things might actually kill me quicker. So I decided, okay, I'm done, and spent about 3 or 4 months trying to stop myself, and just couldn't do it. Like I really couldn't do it, and I was drinking a lot. So I graduated. The college I was going to was gracious enough, out of the, I don't know why, to actually give me a degree. Um, and so I was done, and I moved away. So I had separation from everything. So that was how I quit. I quit like all drugs, and that saved my life because I moved. But
They gave you the degree because they wanted you to go away.
I swear to God, I think there was something to that. Like
Yeah.
I've recently
Since we're mentioning go away, is one of our sponsors.
Go away, Brian.
This way, Brian, go away.
Good segue.
Anyway, go on.
Good segue. So anyway, it was, I just tripled up on the alcohol. So the alcohol, and there was there's always been kind of a low level depression. And it's one of those that just all of a sudden was, had a job that was very isolated, and, and so it just continued, and ended up, meeting somebody, getting married to my first wife in that time, and got a job that let me they didn't care about all the baggage as long as I made them money. And I was really good at making people money. And so they put up with all the fallout from my drinking, and I ended up traveling around the world working for them and solving problems, and I just recently saw some interview with a celebrity talking about how they were at the height of their fame, making the most money they never knew they would ever be able to make, and felt the most isolated and miserable, and on the verge of death that they've ever been. And same thing. I was accolades every day, running a big team, making stupid money, and I do mean stupid money. Had a stupid amount of responsibility. Was traveling, different parts of the world, and I don't think I could have been a whole lot more miserable, because I was just, sober up enough to get through a few hours and then start drinking. And then that cycle was so vicious. And, it took me through, my God, until 2010. And we're talking 99 until 2010. That cycle just repeated, and I was trying and kind of get to the end here. So, and I became a really heavy duty binge drinker because I just wasn't drinking at home for a couple of reasons. So when I would go out to an event or go on work, all bets are off, right? I would get as much as I could get in, and then everything in between was just, I was just miserable to be around. I was white knuckling it the whole time until I could get to the next thing. And so I really don't remember a lot from that period because I was so focused on, I got to get to the next drink. Like I can just feel tensing up just thinking about it a little bit. And
Brian,
then
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
When you get into I don't know if you guys relate to this, but after I've been sober for a while, and the shine of the consequences kind of go away, and then I think I'm crazy when I'm about to say, but when people are like, man, I was in this vicious cycle and I was drinking every day and I was binge drinking. Do you guys ever think like, fuck, I missed that?
It was a lot of work to keep two lives going.
Yeah.
That was.
Anyway, I was just wondering, because I think I'm like that real, because alcohol did something for me. So it's like when I think about that vicious cycle, I think about you know, how like just a few drinks, everything was
Yeah,
like even at the bottom, right? Like that.
just
The
him
drinking.
saying you're gonna get relief
Yeah. It
on
was
the
a little
weekend,
bit-
just like, oh my gosh, that could be, that's,
Yeah.
oh, that's great.
It was the dragon.
Yeah.
So it was, all right. Anyway, Brian, I was just wondering.
All I can say is keep coming back, man.
Adam's on his way out the door. He launched it on the podcast.
You know, but it's an interesting question because I always have a bit of a visceral response when I hear shares. I do a 12-step program, and I have probably heard, oh my gosh, 2,000 people over the last 13 and a half years kind of share their story and different things. And there's only been 3 times, this true story, that I've went, wow, that I have a good memory with it. I don't have a good memory of that. Like, it's an interesting, I don't romanticize. I know, like, I still, even all these years later, the only thing that does that, there's only one thing that does that, and that's wine. Occasionally the sun setting, and the food's on the table, and there's that waft of wine that comes over. I would say that qualifies as like, I do miss that experience part.
Brian, we're cut from the same cloth, but I think we're on opposite ends. Like that's not I see that and I'm like, man, I need to go to the Empire, the rails on the back of the toilet, and I'm gonna find, like,
Yeah. I know. I really miss the smell of cocaine.
Oh man. But yeah, we're the same. It doesn't matter what the scene is, it's the alcohol.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, so I've been watching a lot of we've been lately, like, my tendencies come up in a lot of different ways to this day. Binging shows is probably one of my biggest things at the moment. We've been watching a lot of, you talked about the smell of cocaine. We've been watching a lot of the Border Crossing, basically a show where they're kind of taking people through that process.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. Like, there's things in there that I'm like, God, I do remember that. So I do appreciate the statement. Like, I have some memories that are being unpacked because of that whole process. Like, all the ways that we were hiding stuff. And to go back to the story, is kind of in the middle of it. I was talking about, like, before 2010 when I got sober. So in 1994, August 1994, and I had an attorney on retainer at 19 years old, because I did not want to have. I was trying to avoid, having permanent record. So I have like a list of close calls, and there's got to be a bit of divinity in there somewhere that, 1, I'm alive, 2, I didn't actually go to jail long term, and 3, that somehow in a small town, all those attorneys that helped me, that I paid to help me navigate, to include later in life, kind of kept my record fairly clean. And it just was a little bit of luck and circumstance, and throwing some money at the problem. Thus, we're always working 3 jobs because my money was going to keep me in doing what I was doing, right? But I actually got, kind of ran its course, and I was a chronic blackout driver, which I'm very thankful to this day that nobody got killed. Got my first DUI when I lived in Atlanta, and it was kind of a bad one. And that was the first time that I actually remember, here coming out of the blackout and kind of hearing the door click, right? There's a reality to that. Didn't stop anything, but there was a reality for a few weeks of like, oh shit, like this just got a lot more real, and I maybe have a problem. This was in 1994, and somehow.
Have you ever blacked out?
Mhm.
Yeah. What?
Mhm.
Oh, you're that sneaky alcoholic. I thought we were just gambling problems. Okay. It's like a weird game. Like, I mean, first thing you do is just like make sure nobody's like hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you just try to figure out where you're at. It's like Survivor,
Mhm.
you know. So yeah.
Dude, it is like it's like you're walking at, it's literally like you're walking out of the forest. Like you've been lost and all of a sudden you're in a fog in a forest because you're definitely hitting some things. And then you come out of it and you're trying to piece it together. And it's really, and I absolutely, I was a quick, and the longer it got, the quicker I would black out with a lot less. And so, yeah.
And you never black out and like wake up like, man, I did amazing things last night. I helped a woman across the street. I
budget.
invested in my portfolio. Like, it's always like, man, I woke up with a cow. Well, how did I get to this ranch?
Why do I have a screwdriver in my hand?
Thanks for specifying the ranch.
Better carry some goawaybear.com bear spray with you when you black out. So.
Which this is like perfect. So Brian, in your latest book, you actually talk about a lot of these different kind of scenarios and these revelations, if you will. What inspired you to write this next book and to kind of share some of these pieces?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. So I really wasn't going to write a next book. I'd kind of be like, okay, I wrote my last one was called Sober is Better. And I'm like, that kind of, I think I'm kind of pretty close to done. And then I don't know, right? The COVID and all of that kind of hit and had a lot of time to think. And I'm like, I kind of want to tell the rest of the story because that was kind of like, that was kind of the 0 to 18 part of the story. And then, and then recovery, I jumped over a lot of years.
Got it. Okay.
I just wasn't ready to tell that part of the story yet. Even years in recovery, I just had to do more work. And so I thought, you know what? I've got a few more things to say. I get this out of my system. I think I'm done talking about myself and recovery. I'll talk about like recovery and navigating other things, but I'm done talking about myself. Like if I get this out, and it took an extra 6 months to write the book. Actually, it took about an extra 9 months to write the book because I was just trying to sort that out, right? Like what I wanted to share and how I wanted to share and all that stuff. And so, but I wanted to kind of let people know, like just because again, and it's amazing getting messages where people are like, I love the book. I love that you outwardly share your story with anybody if they ask or want to listen or happen to be listening. Like professionally, I've been sharing my story for, since a month or two after I got sober, because I was going to conferences and I literally was going from, I'm the first one at the bar. Who's going with me? Let's take this hill. We're going to drink everything in here to I'm going to bed early. I'm out. Like, and they're like, what the fuck's going on? Right. But the funny thing was, and we'll kind of go back to the book is, and I wrote about this in the last book. I was so concerned, like a lot of people, and what I learned, and this is for everybody that listens to this, when you're early in recovery, the majority of people don't give a shit about you drinking. They're concerned about their own drinking. And so nobody really, it was literally, I thought it was going to be a big thing like most. And they're like, okay, great. You can drive.
Right.
Like it was this transit. Nobody cared. They were focused on their own shit, not mine. And so it was much easier to kind of work to extract myself from that process, which was nice. And I mean, I had to deal with all the other stuff of like, am I missing out, and kind of go through that process for a bit. But people don't give a shit. I mean, they're there to wind down or wind up or whatever on there. They don't care about everybody else. And so that was a big thing. But yeah, so writing the new book, I literally just I wanted to kind of do a complete story that had a lot to do with kind of the like in recovery, right? Because that's so important, because the taking the substances or whatever the addiction is out of it and you go into recovery, that playbook is very dynamic. It is very changing. Like life's coming at you, and the living life part is way more complicated, especially once you're in recovery for a few years. It gets way more complicated because you don't have the HOV lane, the quick way to anesthetize or take out all the bad feelings. You got to deal with your shit. And so you got to figure out how to use the tools, how to deal with it. And the more that you get into that, the more you unpack. And so, yeah, so that was kind of the genesis of it. Is I wanted to make sure that everybody had kind of a full story of somebody in recovery that didn't need to end horribly, right? It didn't need to be, it just didn't need to be like this big thing. It's like, okay, this is just the normal process, called the guy, he told me how he did it. I started going, to meetings, and I've kept going to meetings. I got a sponsor. I, worked the steps multiple times. I kind of adhere to that philosophy. I'm not a harm reduction guy. I can't do it. Like, it's either everything's on fire and there's an earthquake and a hurricane and a blizzard happening, or I don't do it. Right. And I got a chance to actually live life and be a decent part of, help people, and, and be a decent part of our living experience. I just don't have that choice anymore. And I know that.
Yeah, which I appreciate that. And with the second book, you've kind of talked a lot about a lot of your stories that you've been sharing obviously have been since you've been in recovery for a number of years, but it was good that you didn't shy away from the realness and the hardships that you were facing, even having, I can't remember how long you were sober. One of the stories were like, no, this is, because, I've been 6 years, Kirsten has had, over a decade, so has Adam, but it was good for like people.
2 decades.
I don't want to put her out like that.
Well, she got sober when she was like 14.
I know, I did.
Yeah.
Listen, you're talking sobriety. You did it right. Earned that shit.
That was pretty good for 60.
That's right.
Yeah. And thank you for all your shares, by the way. Like, it's fascinating how much, I've huge fan of the show, first of all, huge fan of the program and the practice and everything that you do up there. And that all means a ton. Like, it's, you guys are in it every day. So you're just doing your thing and you're helping people, but there's a lot of people around the world who really do, not to put any pressure on, but really do count on the shares that come out of your community.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
As an inspiration, right? Like, okay, well, they're doing it, and it looks cold as shit 6 months a year up there. So anybody,
That's why the work is so easy, because they have to come inside. You don't have to chase people very often because it's so cold.
Just offer a coffee.
But I think it's, I was thinking while you're talking, and I was thinking about it a little bit this morning, why the community aspect is so important, right? You heard the rat park, analogy or whatever. They got Ferris wheels and have sex, and they don't do the heroin laced water anymore. I think it's more than that. I think it's more than just there's like excitement or whatever. I heard a little bit about this guy from the last mile. It's that coding program in the prisons or whatever, but he was talking about proximity. Like, it's so true, because even with the programs that we run in the prison, they put them in their own pot.
Yeah.
Versus being amongst everyone.
Yeah.
And then they all come out of it a year later way different.
Yeah.
Than they were if they still had access to the trap, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, when we used to hear in meetings or whatever about like, wherever you go, there you are. Well, I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I think it depends on intention.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm moving away to run away from, to go do drugs somewhere else, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if I'm like uprooting and going to treatment and then deciding to live somewhere else and I'm going to be part of that recovery community, your identity changes. And because you're in proximity of other people, and Brian said it, like he was going to meetings, he was surrounded by people in recovery. He called a guy that was sober.
Yeah.
And I think the most important aspect of community is the proximity, right? Welcoming, grace, proximity around other people who are just like me.
Yeah.
Is more powerful. Like, because I've tried to look at like all the people I know sober, what's the common denominator? There's some that believe in God, there's some that don't, there's some that went to NA, there's some that went to A, there's so many different variables. One aspect, they did it in a group.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I love that you mentioned that, because I think there's a misconception that if you get sober, things will get better. But like you said, moving on into recovery is about this process of developing that community and challenging old beliefs and all of that stuff. Like, I think the idea that if I can just get my kids sober or whatever, then everything will be different. It just doesn't play like that, you know? And there's many people that have done treatment over and over. And the thing that's missing, the thing that I needed at least was, just like you said, I needed a group that I could be with, my whole life could be with, not just 1 hour a week where I, complain about something or whatever. They had to be in my life. And I think that's really uncomfortable. Yeah. But if you're not uncomfortable, you're not getting better. It's,
it's the one thing where, whenever you hear someone that's in an institution of some kind, or you'll hear their family say, when he was there, he was doing good.
Yeah.
And they always think it's because of the institution.
Yeah.
I think it's because of the group that's there.
Yeah.
Right. And then what happens when they leave treatment? They go back to nothing.
Yeah.
There's no extended care, there's no peer support, it's fully reliant on that finding it rather than people creating it.
Yeah.
So
it's huge.
Yeah, I 100% proximity, group, grace, all that stuff. I bet you if we just had groups that were focused on it, we wouldn't even need treatment centers.
Yeah, really, it is a way to get to that community. And
let me take it back fully before someone watches this and they're like, oh my God, I was against treatment.
I know it's just counselors.
You goddamn right. I'm not against counselors, I'm not against treatment. I think there's more we can do as a community. And if we did it, I don't think we would ever need treatment centers later because everyone found their role in responding. Right. Because treatment centers are big because we're not working collaboratively together and trying to, so treatment centers are awesome.
Yeah.
They're providing a service that a lot of people don't want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the workers in there.
Yeah.
It's
what? Someone's going to watch the treatment. I can't tell you, when I did that video about staying in your own lane, how much shit I got from the counselors. I was like, I'm not just talking about the guys. I'm talking about just people in general, just staying out of the way. Just let us build a community.
Yeah.
Well, when I was doing counseling, they had which was not that long ago, but when the counties you could call someone at the county and say, I want to keep this guy a year, and then they'd say, yeah, and then the guys that stayed for a year, there were probably a dozen. They all stayed sober long term because they got to be there a year. The whole 3 month in out that insurance will pay for, which that's a whole different issue, is proven ineffective. It's just like, where are we putting our resources, anyway.
What are we saying, Brian?
Yeah, just for the record, Adam doesn't want treatment centers to go away. So go away bear spray. You need to get it now.
Yeah.
Try to help you dovetail a little.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know if you know what goawaybear.com does, but it makes treatment centers go away.
So just I want to
somebody can take that. I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble.
I want to go back to one of the points raised. When I was probably 3 years sober, that was legitimately the first time that I ever considered suicide. Like, it popped into my head, and I had consistently done the work, right? I mean, life obviously was continuing on and there was a lot going on. And it came out of nowhere, right? And it really, like, it shocked me a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I was in, and so I'm like, what was that? I remember literally saying it out loud, like, what was that thought? Like, I don't even understand where that came from. But once the door opens, like, it's open and you start thinking about, you start processing that in a way. And it freaked me out a little bit. Like, I was like,
Yeah, it should.
yeah, right. And so it was interesting. So, like, went to a meeting, and my sponsor at the time was there, sat with, and I said, hey, can I talk to you afterwards? And he's like, sure. And I would say that I'm kind of lower maintenance on the sponsee side, to the point that they're like, I don't know why you're a
Yeah.
sponsee. You need to actually do what you're supposed to do.
It's actually
I
fine,
call it
or
low
it's
maintenance.
totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other people call it not doing the work.
Yeah.
But I'm like, so I was like, hey, can I talk to you after the meeting? Like, it's kind of important. And he's like, okay. Like, he was pretty direct guy. And he's like, we sat down and I started telling him this. And and he'd been sober for, at that time, probably 26, 27 years, right? Been through the gauntlet. And he's like, look, man, he goes, we can figure out how to connect you with some resources, but I can tell you right now, the way you're thinking about it, you sitting down with me, telling me about your concern that you even had this thought, you're probably going to be fine,
Yeah.
right? Because you're keeping it in the light immediately, like, that how important it is, and that it's just something that you're going to need, you're working on, or whatever kind of is converging, and from an emotional standpoint or a behavioral standpoint. And so, but that was legitimately it's not the first time that I thought maybe that was the easier way, right? But just was never really serious about that thought. It was just another, I was chasing another easier way to change how I feel. It was just an option on the table. But that legitimately was, like, that legitimately popped in my head as a solution. And that was there was a different feeling with it than there ever had been. And so, and it was funny because it was really dissipated after that. Because he's like, look, he goes, I think you're good. Like, you're just keep doing what you're doing. And, like, you call me immediately if it continues, and I'll help you figure it out. But that was a weird one. That was 3 years in, right? And I found that that's not uncommon. Which, again, another surprise, right? There's been lots of surprises in sobriety when you're doing the work. And so yeah, like, that community component where you trust, right? You're looking at patterns when you talk about community and proximity. Like, you have patterns of trust and loving relationships, like, and service. Like, you see people helping, like, without an agenda. Like, you see truth tellers, because that keeps you alive. All of that is a new pattern that maybe even if you had a great upbringing, you didn't think you did, because you were in a loop that all you saw was the negative, bad things of every situation, because that's what was going on in your head, right? Your pattern was starting to evolve. So yeah, I can tell you the other thing. I've spent 5 years in the first place I got sober, and that community moved completely, didn't know anybody, and had to reintegrate into another sober community for another 5 years, and was really difficult. I just kept listening. Like, I just always stayed in touch with my sponsors, but I literally am like, I started listening. I heard the very first conversation that I called the guy when I got sober. He's like, just go to as many meetings, different meetings. You got to find something that you relate to and you feel good about wanting to go to. So just go to all of them. Like, doesn't matter. Go to all of them twice, whatever. You just got to find your people and your process. And so I kept that in mind. So I went to like 13 different meetings when I was in Kansas, when I moved to Kansas City, like South, North, gay, straight, Like I was literally like, I don't care. I just want people that are gonna like I connect with that I can, come and share and listen to what's going on in their lives consistently. So I went to all of them like twice. And the funny thing was I came all the way back to the very first one I went to and at a church kind of in the middle of Kansas City. And that's the one that I went to, got, had a couple sponsors there. And then when we moved to New Mexico, another new community, right? That was 3.5 years ago. The good thing was I was coming out here for work. So I had already found a clubhouse that I was going to meetings when I was coming into town. So I started going to meetings. So I'm on like my third chapter of finding that community. And it takes, it takes a minute, right? Because not naturally comfortable having like people completely embedded in my life of what's going on. And so it just takes getting to know people and, kind of going through that process. But about 3.5 years into it, Sunday, went to a meeting, went out to breakfast afterwards with about 8 or 9 people. And it was awesome. Like it's truly about 3.5 years, I'm kind of finding my legs of this community and everything. And it's a great sober community. And so there is a lot, and we could literally talk for days about reinventing like an actual efficient support, prevention, identification, actual treatment and support model. Like there's way better ways that are used around, in different parts of the world that are, better use of resources. And, but it's the same thing. You can't untether people and expect them to repeat a behavior that they just don't really have a capacity. Right. And so that I really, really 100% believe that. So.
Well, I appreciate that, Brian. This is a good episode. Yeah. Brian's got a good story.
Yeah, well done, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have like 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure, Brian, that we get a chance to plug anything, like for the book. Like, what's the best way to be able to find you? Are you still speaking? If people wanted to come see you speak, like, is that still something that you do? Can you share a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, have like professionally, Chief Revenue Officer for Remble Health, and we're basically a 24/7 digital mental health support platform, right? So we get to work with treatment centers, agencies, counties, states to try and make that aperture of support get, everywhere you can get, Wi-Fi and internet signal. So I get to do this every day. Right. That's all I do is talk to people that are trying to get people better. And so just had to do that plug real quick. Yeah. And so totally get the book. So the new book is called, Fuck My Demons, Redefining Normal, a journey to spirit.
And Ricky read it.
Yeah. Well, when you told me that, I looked him up to like learn a little more about him. And I saw you had a book. So I'm like, I bought the book. It was great.
Oh,
yeah, I bought it on Amazon.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Do you have an audio? I'm an audio book guy, Brian. Do you have it available on audio?
This book isn't on audio yet.
Oh, if you need a reader.
I can read.
Yeah, we can be the readers. It's really important that the reader has a great voice.
Yeah.
Because I was listening to an audiobook the other day and it was like an intern or something. Ooh. And I was like, this is great content, but I cannot stand this voice. It was just like penetrating that part of my ear, like at that octave where it's just like, God, I sound like my kids crying.
What if that was the author?
Huh?
What if that was the author's voice?
It was not the author. There's no way. It was an author. I was reading a book about 10 times is better than 2 times.
Okay.
It's an entrepreneur kind of ecosystem book. And I was like, man, I was starting to read it. And then, my attention span. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to get the audio book. Costs like $29 for the audio. I was like, this better be goddamn good. I started listening to it. It's like, hello. I was like, God damn it. Where's this money?
Hello.
There is something to that because Richard Branson's the second part of it, the second version of his autobiography. I don't know who the reader is, but I can't listen to it. Like every time I work myself into a bit of an I'm trying to think what my mom hissy fit. I'm trying to think of my mom used to call it.
Yeah.
A bit of a hissy fit, like, oh my God, I can't hear the words, right? I'm literally going, why did you do this? And so there's definitely something to it. Audiobooks are interesting from a kind of to talk about writing a book. First of all, y'all need to write a book. Like if you're not doing it already, like you need to write a book because the story is fantastic, like the collective story, and it could be like the community. Everybody has books in them because everybody has stories, right? And I feel like one of my biggest requirements to spend time with people is that they have a curiosity, right? That's if somebody sits down with me and they don't give two shits about anything that I have to say or do or what's going on, and they're literally so focused on themselves, I cannot spend time with them. Like straight up, I'm old enough now that I won't spend time with somebody who doesn't have a curiosity to ask questions and want to engage in life around them. And that's one thing about like recovery people typically have an element of curiosity because you have survived. So you have kind of not everybody's the same, right? That's not like the silver bullet is not recovery because there's other work to do. But in general, the people that I've met, I love it because they're question askers, right? Because they're got used to asking questions of themselves. What do I want to do? Who do I want to be now that I've got this new foundation on trying to live a life? And a lot of that stopped in your creative years, right? When you're 9, 10, 11, 12, all development stopped because you were trying to figure out how to feel better. And so you get to revisit that creative element as an adult. And if you embrace that, it's so fantastic. And it's writing for me. Like I'd love to be a painter, but I'm a shit painter. So that doesn't really work. I do that for fun. It's more the romanticizing of it. Like that would be fantastic, but I have almost zero talent there.
I like the process of charcoal drawing. I am trash. But I love doing it. And then I get it. I like start thinking, I'm like, actually, I'm really good at this. And then I'll draw some eyes and be like, God damn it. They're all deformed and
Same thing. If I happen to draw something that's interesting, I'm now, the Van Gogh of Santa Fe until I try and do it again. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm so not talented.
You got lucky once, Al. I don't know how you pulled that painting off, but you did it. But you never again. Yeah.
So again, y'all need to write a book. Just saying, and any way I can help, I would love to, because it's a great process, and it really truly there are elements. I'll tell you one interesting thing about writing a book that I didn't anticipate is it's published and now it's out in the world and you have no control over that narrative. And you're like, oh my God, what did I put in that book?
Yeah. Oh, that's like how I feel about my Facebook updates. As soon as I post a Facebook update, it's got like yesterday or emails. I sent out that email. Did you get that email?
I was going to respond. Somebody else has already.
We're doing a migration from Google to Microsoft, and I sent out just the step by step. I'm here for you. I'm available. Whatever. And then at the bottom, I said,
very end.
At the very end, I said, if you have any issues between, or if you have any issues now or during the migration, please let me know.
That's what he thought. He
Sent. And then I get an email back. It said, I'm gonna have to talk to HR about all the kisses. And I was like, what? And then I go back and I read my email. It says, if you have any kisses for me now or whatever. 110 people
Yeah, all staff.
All staff.
XOXO.
Yeah. I should have put that when I sent out an email today. But all I said, it was like, hey, I'm available today and tomorrow for any issues. Quotation, kisses.
Yeah, you should show up with a bucket of Hershey's Kisses just to get it.
Yeah,
like,
that's not
This is what I
bad.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On brand. That's on.
Yeah, just keep it on brand. XOXO, gossip at them.
And now for the kiss.
So to answer your question, yeah, you can go to like brianwimpen.com has all the books. You can get it on Amazon. Like that's all available. It's ebook. It's basically Kindle ebook and paperback. Tried to keep the prices very reasonable so that it's accessible. Don't have an audiobook yet. That's kind of in the works. But that's a lot more complicated than anybody could possibly imagine trying to get one of those done correctly. It's bizarre on how expensive and how complicated that is to actually get one of those published. So just taking a little bit of time on that. So, but yeah, absolutely. You can buy it. Literally, you can buy one and I'll send it signed, or you can just buy one and read it and all those good things. And so, I appreciate the time. This has been fantastic. Love the conversations. Again, cannot underscore how much of a fan and a supporter from afar I am of everything that you all are doing. It's one of my favorite, stories around the country of the community really starting to formalize to make that safety net actually work in a way that just makes sense, that it's actually like people are getting better, right? Lives are getting rebuilt. Probably, you're having people that enter the community that don't have to burn their life down 5 or 6 times. And potentially it ended up maybe taking their life, right? So that's the significance of what you all do. And so thank you for that. It's incredibly inspiring.
Well, Brian, I've been doing it all by myself. And no, we got to really.
Shoulders, man. The shoulders gotten bigger.
I'm glad you brought that up. I've been wanting to tell everyone. No, we got a really great team. Everybody, I think that's what's really good with F5 and the Ridge and everybody knows their place, and they just, out. I mean, last night, Amber Lund was out driving people to meetings. It's 7 o'clock at night, and then we have some other people that are, helping people with everyone knows their skill sets.
Yeah.
And they really double down on those efforts when they're working with people. So I'm super proud of the team across the state and soon to be in multiple states. So to be continued on that.
Heard it first.
So
yeah. Cool.
Yeah, thank you. You're inspiration for others too. And Adam sends kisses.
Yeah, I should have led with that. I saw that on LinkedIn. I saw the update, and that gave me a solid chuckle. I should have led with that. That would have been. I'm just not that clever. I don't care how much I try. That would have been extra solid.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Brian. Appreciate you for joining us on the show. Thank you, everyone who's been watching. This is the F5 Recovery Podcast. Have a great day in recovery.